If this cast looks anything like yours, then this video is definitely for you. I'm Captain Chris Myers of Central Florida Sight Fishing Charters, and I'm going to show you a much more effective way to start casting your spinning rods for accuracy and distance. I'm a full-time fishing guide here in Central Florida for over 20 years, and much of my fishing is heavily dependent on accurate and effective casting. And over the years, I've found so many people who wind up with their rod pointing down into the boat or the water behind them, and then their cast goes really high up in the air and not so far out, and you have very little to no control over where that thing is going to land. In addition, on a windy day like today, if I cast up here in this big arching rainbow and I just barely miss the trees, and now the wind keeps on blowing line off my spool and blowing line in a pile here, and now when I start reeling, I'm putting a bunch of slack on my spool. And if you're fishing with braided lines, that's a recipe for a knot disaster. If we start to treat the tip of our spinning rod as an extension of our arm, and we move this rod tip like we would move our arm if we were throwing an object. So if I took this lure and I was going to throw it out, instead of cast it out with the rod, I certainly wouldn't start down here and come up and over to try to throw it out there. If I was making a short cast, I'd make a little short throw. Medium cast, a medium throw. A super long cast, a super long throw. And all of those throws have something in common. My hand, and thus the lure, is going in a straight line. So if you want your cast to go to a specific location that you are telling it to go, you must move the tip of this rod in a straight line towards that location. And if you're starting down, your rod tip pointing down and the butt of the rod pointing up, it's for sure that half of this cast at least is going up, and then the other half goes down, and you got to try to figure out where to let your finger off in there somewhere so it doesn't go quite so high. If you want to cast in an overhand manner, bring the rod back to here, and now my stroke is going to be from here to there in a straight line. So I have a triangle, straight part across the top, and if I only wind up the end of this triangle and cast in a straight line, it went much farther with no extra slack, much quicker, and it landed exactly where I want. Casting in straight lines is the secret to success when trying to become accurate with your spinning rod cast. Now, just like throwing a ball, we could throw it up here, we could throw it out here, you could throw it sidearm, you could throw it almost underhand, and with a little bit of practice, you can make them all go to the same exact spot. Same thing with my spinning rod cast. So the easiest way to cast exactly straight, of course, is to cast up here in a perfectly straight line. But for me, I find it much more comfortable a lot of the time to be casting out here. And all I've done is taken that casting triangle, tilted it down to where I want it to be. It could be completely sidearm. We could take that casting triangle down here. So that cast was from here to there. Now you will find probably when you're casting, if you decided not to cast overhand, I have never really seen anybody wind up way back here and come all the way around here to try to cast sidearm. But if you're not doing it that way, because it's ridiculously difficult to figure out where to get it to go, if I want to cast straight out here and I'm winding up here, it's going to be really hard for me to figure out when to let my finger off. If I start here and end towards the target, and that lure is traveling behind my tip now, this whole stroke, it's traveling behind my tip exactly where I want it to go, I stop, the lure keeps on going. If I'm moving that lure around in a half a circle, It's not really effectively traveling towards the target, and it's much more difficult to figure out when to let my finger go. Cast sidearm, 3/4, straight overhead, backhand, same motion. Casting backhand, same, the same. It's always that same little triangle. If you think of that and not a triangle with an ice cream cone dome on the top of it, have a straight top to your triangle, and you will make much, much more effective casts. An extra bonus tip to make this even more effective is for anything except for ultralights or very, very short casts, stop casting one-handed. If you find yourself doing this cast and trying to take 6.5, 7-foot rods with a 2,000 or larger reel on it and cast effectively out away from you, you're going to find it much easier if you put two hands on the rod. So I kind of think of this like golfing, baseball, shooting a rifle. I could shoot my rifle one-handed, much more stable if I put my hand there. I could golf swing one-handed, don't, because two works better. Swing a baseball bat one-handed, two always works better. If you're going to make longer casts, it's much easier to generate power and speed with the tip from down here, because this is nothing but a long lever. And I am taking this lever and snapping that tip over. And I can generate much more speed with the tip here than I can with here. And I also find when you cast one-handed that when you let this go, the tip has a tendency to bounce all over the place at the end of the cast, where this helps stabilize it. But the moment I let this cast go, let my finger off the line, the cast is on its way, this hand can no longer help me or do anything to affect the cast. So I don't need it down here anymore when it hits the water, because this is not a fishing position. This is a casting position. The instant I let this thing go, my hand is right here, stop, flick, close on the handle, I'm ready to go. So I don't want to be caught with my lure landing or my bait landing in the water, my hand down here, and I have no way to fish, set the hook, do anything, because my hands are not in a fishing position, they're in casting position. Cast like this as it's in the air, right before it lands, stop, flick, close on the handle, you're ready to catch a fish the instant it hits the water. If you're going to be here in Central Florida, you can come see me for a fishing charter or a one-on-one personal fishing lesson. And I also have tons more videos on how to improve your spinning rod casts right here.